Hello, everybody. My name is Jesse Maldonado. I'm the political and labor director here at the Democratic Municipal Officials. Got a background not only here working at DMO for the last about 5 years, almost coming up this summer, but also serving in local office. I'm currently a community college trustee here in the state of Oregon in Lane County, and actually got elected to city council when I was 18. So I have nothing more than passion when it comes to talking about building up a campaign and running for local office. So really excited to talk more about it with the team at NGP VAN, and I'll kick it over to Naisha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naisha Brackett. I am the State and Local Campaigns Director here at NGP VAN. Before coming to NGP, I actually got my start in local municipal politics, running campaigns, starting at the school board level, then countywide, and up and down the ballot since then, before doing some work at city government, and then eventually ending at NGP VAN, where I've been an account executive for 4 years. I do recognize some of you, so we have spoken. So nice to see you all again. And now I'm the director, and great to be here to speak with all of you with our wonderful partners, Jesse, and our wonderful marketing team, Brandon Blumenhurst.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse and Aisha, for those introductions. Hey, everyone. My name is Brandon Blumenhurst. I'm the content marketing manager for NGP VAN. So I'll be kind of guiding us through the webinar today and also just providing some insights from my background, which is, again, like the others here, very based in local politics. So working on state representative campaigns for a few cycles, some city council and mayoral races as well. So have helped, work for Democrats up and down the ballot before coming here to NGP VAN, but have been here now for coming up on 4 years. So very excited to continue to help, advance the Democratic and progressive movement together, just in a different way now, and helping, enable candidates like yourselves to really, have all the resources that you need to set your campaign up for success. So with that, we will move into basically, at the top of this, we recognize that many of you recognize a lot of our tools already. Many of you have used either VoteBuilder or VAN to, cut lists of voters, target different precincts, put together MiniVAN campaigns for your canvassers and volunteers to go out and knock on doors to help advance your campaign moving forward. You've also, cut turf for, hours and hours in VAN to make sure that you can, again, just target the right amount of voters in the right places. And then also just using, open virtual phone bank to, again, enable your volunteers to help make calls on your behalf. And so all of those tools are phenomenal, and they make up a huge part of what we do here and how every campaign can set themselves up for success from a field perspective, right? Field and voter outreach is absolutely critical, and we know that very well here. But at the same time, field is only one part of what sets up a successful campaign. So on the next slide, we'll basically just kind of outline a little bit more about what we want to talk about today. Basically, just exploring between NGP VAN and the DMO, how municipal campaigns can expand. So looking at how ways you can build your base, making it easier for you to host events, encourage more action, garner more support and engagement. That is not just for, a single day or a single election cycle even, but they can be, long-term supporters of your campaign, whether you decide to run again in the future, run for higher office, all of those things. The second piece is just, fundraising. It's hard. We all know that. But there are a lot of ways that we can, our tools and our tips and strategies can help you kind of raise and save more for your campaigns. So again, on the front side of it, just making sure that you are aware of some fundraising strategies, and then also having the tools on the back end to track your fundraising, see, progress in real time, follow up on pledges, and then file your compliance reports as well, as that's, another needed activity to make sure that your campaign is staying on track. And then finally, just setting your campaign up to win your election. We know, there are candidates running all across the country, some of whom are running in, very blue seats, some who are running in very red seats, but we want to make sure that everyone is equipped with the knowledge and resources to know, here are all the great parts of, or here are all the critical parts of your campaign. Here's how we can help you achieve those, or build those and set your campaigns up for success. So with that, we will move to the next slide. And just to kind of preface at the top of this, Jesse and Naisha and I were talking about this yesterday, and really what it came down to is, we know down ballot candidates are often working full-time jobs. They are, knocking doors at night. They have to go to fundraisers. They have to do events, all of those types of things. And the number one resource, the most finite resource on any campaign is the candidate's time. And so basically, this entire webinar is really structured around here are the ways to be more efficient with your time because we know it's in short supply. And so we want to make sure that you are making the most of every moment. Because as Jesse shared yesterday, it's, there's time, people, and money. You can always get more people to help your campaign. You can usually find more money, but you can't, add more time to your schedule. And so we want to start that off kind of here at the top, and then we'll move into the first topic of conversation, which I will pass over to Jesse.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. And uh, glad we added in that time piece. I'm starting to talk to more candidates as we move through this year, and that seems to be the thing that everyone is clamoring for is some more time. But you can't get more of it, but you can use it wisely. So one of the things that we have wanted to talk to folks about today was building your list and managing your volunteers. Right? You can always find more volunteers in your community, whether that's family, friends, colleagues, just people who are really invested in your message and wanting to make your community a better place. And so figuring out who those folks are is really, really important and where to start and meeting them where they're at. So first off, kind of starting at the beginning of this, and we've talked about this and we'll talk about this kind of throughout the webinar today, but building a list when you get going on your campaign. A lot of folks on this call might already be running their race or might be thinking about running your race coming up this year or next year. Starting a list today is super important to jot down ideas and make maybe it's just a running notes on your iPhone that you're carrying around with you every single day. And you're waiting in line or you're filling up for gas and you're like, that person would be great to go knock on doors. They're really good at talking to somebody. Writing those names down on your list just so you can have them later on. So you can call them and ask them to go knock on doors. You can ask them to host an event. You can ask them to donate to your campaign, but you got to have a full scoped team to make this work. And you want to be able to, as I mentioned, meet them where they're at. Some people are going to be great at knocking on doors. Some people are absolutely going to hate talking to people. They're introverts, but they have a skill set that's going to lend itself to your campaign somewhere else. So you want to be able to make sure you plug and play these people where they work and where they're at. So that's gigantic. But then another piece of this is to make sure that they come back throughout the cycle. So you don't want a volunteer to just be a one and done volunteer. We call it reshifting usually in the field, but you want to be able to make sure that these folks come back and that you can scale them up. So they knocked on doors one weekend. Well, how about they knock on doors these next 3 weekends as well, or 2 weekends, or whatever it might be, make your ask and make sure that it's scaling up as you move forward so that these people continue to help your campaign out, and also ask them to find other friends to come with them too. Volunteering for a campaign is a fun thing, and so they want to bring friends with them next time when they come and do this. So make sure that you're scaling up, finding people where they're at, and making sure that they are helping your campaign in any possible way that they can.
Awesome. So I have a few questions for folks actually before diving into this slide. So if you could please drop them in the chat. But for those folks that are elected officials or are going to be running for office, can you post and let us know whether or not you're already hosting events for your campaign or before you launch? And then can you also let us know in the chat whether or not you have heard of Mobilize? Okay, so Mobilize is a tool, an event management tool, and a volunteer recruitment tool all in one that allows folks to post their events and receive signups on those events. So one way that you can actually grow your list, as Jesse just mentioned, is using our tool called Mobilize. So what it does is you can post several events. So if you're having phone banking events, if you're hosting in-person events, if you are hosting door knocking events, any type of events that you are having, you can post those events and volunteers can sign up and see the day and time of the event. And what it does is it actually, one, helps your campaign save time. As we talked about, you don't get time back, and that's a finite resource. So it sends an automated text and email confirmation as soon as someone signs up, 24 hours out from the event, and up to 2 hours before the event. So not only does it help build your supporter list, but it also confirms those shifts for you to help decrease flake rates. Another thing, I know a lot of folks are using VoteBuilder to canvas to go door to door. As we talked about reshifting folks, we have direct integrations with not only VoteBuilder, so your efforts aren't duplicative, right? You can also integrate your Mobilize link into MiniVAN. So as folks are canvassing and going door to door, they can be reshifted and actually sign up for another event right there through the Mobilize app. And that, sorry, the MiniVAN app. And that's great because it does help with that reshifting effort. So you don't even have to make that hard ask. We do that for you with the Mobilize and MiniVAN integration. And then the last thing, one of the final most important parts of Mobilize is that it allows for post-event feedback. So you can connect with your volunteers and making sure that you're taking that feedback to improve future events. So that way, one, we are letting our volunteers know that we hear them and make these events better. But two, volunteers do also appreciate that you do implement those changes or, sometimes we want to hear that feedback. And then the other final thing, right, we're talking about growing our volunteer list, but another thing that Mobilize does allow is that you can embed your fundraising URL into your Mobilize event page. So as soon as someone signs up for an event, they can be prompted to actually donate to your campaign. So we talked about moving folks up that ladder of engagement, but we can actually also not only grow our volunteer list, but actually turn our volunteers into grassroots donors by making that fundraising ask. So it's saving a bunch of time, allowing those automations and those things that would typically take a lot of time, a lot of follow-up for one event. It saves that time for all of your events.
Fantastic. Thank you, Naisha and Jesse. So I wanted to take a second and just talk a little bit about fundraising. Fundraising is something that is very difficult for a lot of candidates, but there are a couple of things just kind of on the front end that make it a little bit easier for everyone to kind of work through what fundraising can look like for your campaign. And the number one thing that I've told a number of candidates over the years is you rarely get what you don't ask for, especially when it comes to fundraising. So half of the battle of fundraising is literally just making the asks to people, whether it's through text messages, call time, email, social media. There are a number of ways that you can make this ask. But again, in order to run an effective campaign, you have to raise money to pay for literature to leave at doors when you're canvassing, to send mailers, to run digital advertising programs. There are a number of things that you need money for. And so that's why it's so imperative to launch your fundraising early so that you can start building the resources that you need to pay for all of these things when it comes time to get out the vote. So one of the things that is, we talked a little bit about, building a list on the front end of this. So, whether this person has offered to donate to you, they've offered to host a fundraiser for you, they've offered to go knock doors with you. It's very important that you track kind of all of that information in a way that makes sense, at the start of your campaign. A lot of people start out in a spreadsheet, which is a very easy way to just kind of mark down names and numbers, and what they were interested in. But at some point, it becomes very cumbersome to use a spreadsheet, especially when it comes to fundraising, because you're tracking, when was the last time you asked someone for money? Did they follow through on it? Did they pledge a donation to you and they haven't given it back yet? Are there best times to contact people? How did you reach out to them? And so that's something that, when you're looking at building out an effective fundraising operation for your campaign, it becomes pretty quickly relevant that it's very, very helpful to have a CRM like NGP that allows you to not only track your fundraising, but also track all of those other things that come with fundraising too. Another great piece of why NGP is such a helpful tool is that we talk all the time about, or you may have heard of call time fundraising as something that a lot of candidates do. And that's because it's like the number one tried and true way for campaigns to raise money quickly. And so basically what you would do with that list that you developed early on in your campaign is, start at the top of your list and just kind of work your way down to try and get money in the door quickly. So this is quite literally just picking up the phone and calling people about, to share with them why you're running this race, what you want to do when you're elected, and why they should donate to your campaign to support it. So, this can look like a this can move a variety of different ways. Usually, one of the best ways to kind of continue building out that list on the top side is really just, you know, working through your personal, professional, and political circles. So working through, all of the people that are in your life that you think would support your campaign. And then also just continuing to expand that list out by going through your contact list in your phone, going through your email addresses in your, personal email, and just pulling names and contact information so that you can reach out to those people through whatever method necessary to, again, make that ask on the front end, because it is so integral of literally just making the ask at the start. And then the other piece of this too is as you're starting a call time program, so as you start calling these people, you want to personalize your script a little bit, right? So I wouldn't necessarily call my mom and talk to her the same way that I would talk to, like a local elected official, right? My mom, cares about me as a person, wants to see me succeed. Extended family members too are kind of in the same boat. Like they may not necessarily agree with your politics, but they do want to see you succeed as a person. So having that level of personalization that makes it a little bit more relevant for them to want to see you succeed is helpful and kind of, encouraging them to be more likely to donate to your campaign. And so then the other piece of this is, you tell them a little bit more about why you're running, how you need their support. And then there comes a point where you just have to ask for a dollar amount. Before you get into the campaign, make sure that or before you get into the call, make sure you have a number in mind before you call them. And you can come up with this number however you want, but a lot of times people will have just a number in mind that they'll call for. And so then you'll call, ask them, and then you just have to say, would you be willing to give me $250 today to support my campaign? And then you just have to stay quiet. The reason being is because oftentimes candidates will get into these calls and these conversations. They'll make the ask and then immediately start talking themselves down, which leaves money on the table. So if there was a donor who would be willing to give you $250, but you didn't stay quiet and immediately started talking yourself down to $100, that's $150 that you could have left on the table, right? That's, mailers, that's literature, that's a lot of different things. And so you want to make sure that when you ask them, you make the definite number ask, stay quiet, and then wait for them to respond. Hopefully everyone's saying yes to you. That's the ideal circumstance, right? But there are some people who will say no. And it's important to ask why. The reason being because, again, as you're working through kind of what these fundraising calls can look like, you can also kind of pivot, right? If they say no, is it because of timing? Can they not just give like right now? Could I call back in 2 weeks? And would you be willing to give then? Or, if they say, oh, I have to talk to my partner about it. Oh, well, when do you think you could have that conversation? Could I give you a call back next week? Just working through some of those conversations can also help lead to additional pledges that you can follow up on in the future rather than writing them off on entirely just because they said no. There are people who will just say no and they mean they'll never give to you. So, move on from those conversations. But that's one piece of advice as well. The second thing is just making sure that you are fundraising through multi-channel outreach. So making sure that you are, calling them, you're texting them, you're emailing them. You can reach out to them over social media. You can send like a letter to them. There are multiple ways that you can reach out to people. And then you always just want to know in what way did they respond best? And so that way, you have a method of communication that is, their preferred channel. And again, you can continue to reach out that way so you're being more efficient with your time. And again, it's really hard to track a lot of that within just a simple spreadsheet. And so that's where it becomes important to integrate into a system like NGP that makes it easy for you to track not only when you're asking them, but through what method, and so that you can track that preferred method of contact in the future as well. And then the third thing is just making sure that you're following up on pledges. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'll give you I'll give you something in the future, right? And so there comes a time where, especially before reporting deadlines, when you can reach out back out to those people and say like, "Hey, I know you were going to give me something. I've got a deadline on Friday at noon where I need to raise more, or I need to post the best report that I can." So you want to make sure that you're not losing track of any of those outstanding pledges. And again, they can easily fall through the cracks if you're kind of looking at it through a spreadsheet. So you want to make sure that you're recording them and then following up on them in the future, because again, those are people who have already said that they're going to give you money, but they just haven't done it yet. And so the other thing that will happen is as you're going through call time, people will say, "Oh yeah, I'll give you $250." You'll send them the donation link or, a text with where to send a check or whatever it is, and then they won't follow through with it. And so you want to make sure that again, you have that noted somewhere so you can reach back out to them and make sure you get that money in the door for your campaign. And then finally, it's really about making it easy for yourself by utilizing a CRM that allows you to track outreach and engagement and fundraising, and because then it'll make things easier on the back end to just again contact everybody the way they prefer to be contacted, help you raise more money, help save pledges, and all of that just helps it makes it easier for you as a candidate who, again, might be doing this all on your own. You might have a small team helping you, but having all that information in one place just makes it much easier to run an efficient fundraising program. Jesse, Naisha, anything else you'd like to add here?
Yeah, just really briefly. One thing I would just make sure again, back to this whole time piece. College friends and th things like that may be willing to give you like 25 bucks. Probably not worth a call, frankly. Be very like concerted in your efforts and who you're going to call and what that dollar amount's going to be. $25 is probably not worth a call. Definitely worth a text. $2,500 probably should go get dinner with somebody or get coffee with them, or meet them in person at some juncture, to do that. So scale it, and how you're reaching out and we're talking to these folks. And back to college friends or somebody else who you maybe loaded and you're asking them for money, but asking people for money sucks, and there's no other way to like paint that. But a lot of these folks that you're asking for money actually want to support you, as Brandon kind of mentioned earlier. So don't be afraid to do it. It does feel a little weird once you get in the groove. It's nice to be in that groove, but a lot of these folks, especially family and friends, they want to support you and they are anticipating you asking them. So that kind of helps lessen that barrier to entry and get the foot in the door a little bit.
Great. I think we can move to the next slide. Yep, and I'll pass it to Naisha.
Awesome. So, as you just heard Brandon and Jesse go over some tips for fundraising, and making sure that we are making that hard ask and doing the call time. One way, as Brandon mentioned, you can do that is through NGP. So, just to recap kind of what he talked about is through NGP, it's a place where you can run your entire fundraising program, all from one place. So, you don't have to use a bunch of different tools, an email tool, a call time tool, spreadsheets, to do what NGP does. One, that becomes a headache. The importing and exporting of all of the information is a lot of time, and you can make real costly mistakes, and we'll get to that in a bit. But spreadsheets are great to start, but as you level up your fundraising program, it does become a headache. And in my experience, right, it is very hard to manage as those donors are rolling in, and as we get closer to election day, right, as our list is growing. So through NGP, and we'll touch over some things in a bit, you can run your email program. So we talked about that multi-channel outreach and ways to follow up with folks. You can do that right through NGP. You can accept contributions through NGP. You can pull several reports. You can do call time through NGP, amongst other things, as well as compliance. So the first thing I kind of want to chat about is our call time mobile. So as we're going over fundraising tips and how to do call time and the best way to follow up with folks, we have a robust call time program built into NGP. One where within profiles, you can keep that record of information of who folks are, if they've pledged. We have to follow up with those folks. We can schedule those follow-ups, as Jesse just mentioned, if we're getting close to a deadline. We can schedule how we're going to follow up with that person. Are we going to go to dinner because this is a $2,500 donor? Or are we going to shoot them a text because this is a $25 donor, right? We could do all of that through NGP in our call time program. We can keep a bunch of notes on the individual as well as see their giving history as it pertains to our campaign. Some really other unique features that we have in NGP are donor target scores and reporting. So it helps you make sure you aren't leaving any money on the table. So you can pull several reports to see where folks are in their giving journey. If we can, if they haven't given, they're a lapsed donor, right? If they have more money to give, their propensity to give to us, right? Are we asking for too little? Those scores can really help in that reporting in NGP, making sure that we're making the most of our time and ask. And then one of the final things to receive our contributions, we have a tool called NGP Payments, and that allows you to receive contributions, raise more money, and we actually have lower processing fees than most folks on the market. So our fees are only 3.25%. And again, as I mentioned, within having everything within NGP, there's that direct integration. So you aren't downloading and exporting information. We aren't losing data. Everything is stored right there within NGP. So you don't have to worry about kind of like what's happening. Where is this information saved, right? What Excel spreadsheet? We can handle all of that right there from NGP. And we aren't leaving any money on the table.
Great. Thank you, Naija. And we will pass over to Jesse.
Awesome. Thanks, Naija. Thanks, Brandon. So, yeah, one of the last things, one of the last few things we wanted to chat about here was compliance. And this is such a tough thing to talk about holistically on a call like this because, and exactly why we wanted to talk about it, because it is so different in every single state and even cities and towns within those states and school districts and municipalities that you find within your given state. So, compliance is a gigantic issue and can become something that can actually land you with a fine or in a very, very worst case scenario with jail time if not handled properly, which is why NGP is such a fantastic tool to help keep you out of any sort of trouble that you could find yourself in because it's built to help you with compliance and ensure that you're reporting things properly. So, every single town, very, very different. Being able to capture these things that you need to capture based on your requirements, but employer and occupation, ensuring that your deadlines are proper, ensuring if you are capturing how much money can give. I mentioned a $2,500 donor earlier. Sometimes that is more money than you actually can accept legally for a given race. And so you want to make sure you don't take more money than you can legally take. So understanding your rules as a starting point of what goes on in your community and then making sure that you utilize NGP to make sure your reporting happens properly is such a fantastic from 1, 2, 3 kind of step to get things done. But another big thing we also wanted to chat about was just briefly, but in-kind donations. So a lot of folks kind of back to where we started this call and talking about recruiting lists of volunteers. You got somebody who just doesn't have the time to go knock on doors for you, but guess what? They happen to own a restaurant in your community and they want to throw you a fundraiser or they want to throw you a friend raiser, whatever type of event they're going to do for you. You got to make sure that you're reporting that properly and that they're not giving you money directly to your campaign, but they're giving you free food and drinks and the space and rental and AV equipment and all of that that comes along with an event. So you want to make sure you're reporting that stuff because those sometimes will get missed. You're just like, oh, it's a free event. I don't have to worry about it. Somebody else paid for it. Well, you got to report that because some money actually did transpire there. So you want to make sure you're doing that and tracking things properly. So utilizing NGP to make sure you're filing your compliance reports and doing them on time is a gigantic piece of running for local office.
Awesome. And in my opinion, in my experience also, one of the most cumbersome parts of running for office is doing the compliance reporting. And as Jesse mentioned, right, NGP does help with that. So what we do is we do offer state compliance reporting for most states and even for some municipalities, right? As we mentioned, sometimes folks do have local reporting that they have to do outside of statewide reporting. So within NGP, you can do that with the help of NGP, right? So we will upload those reports into NGP. we're aggregating all of your data for that filing period, and you can export that PDF and send that off right to your state. It also helps you identify errors within NGP. So if we are missing some important information, for example, employer and occupation, we forgot to gather that information when we received that donation. NGP flags that for us, so we can go back and reach out to that individual to make sure we get that. But the most important part, honestly, in my opinion, one of the great features of NGP is the fact that you can actually customize the contribution limits, but you can also program the cycle limits in NGP. So it is very difficult, especially when you have recurring donors, to remember off the top of your head, who's approaching that cycle limit, who, hopefully has given us too much and has maxed out or over that cycle limit, right? Who do we have to do those disbursements to? So through NGP, you can pull several reports, as I mentioned previously, to see who's approaching that limit, who's over that limit, to make sure that we're compliant. One, but also making sure we aren't leaving money on the table, right? If folks are close to that cycle limit, let's max them out if we are, close to that deadline, or if they're close to doing that. The other thing is that you can do real-time contribution tracking. And as I mentioned, the reporting feature is very robust. So you can actually schedule reports to folks to make sure you are maintaining compliance. And you can regularly track your performance as well. And it offers cleaner reconciliation. So that is the most cumbersome part of running for office. We all have to do it when we are running for office, or for those of us that have ran campaigns. But NGP does help you do that. Saves you time, saves, the time on the back end with any mistakes, if we do have any. It helps us to make sure we're avoiding all of that.
Great. And we'll pass this to Jesse.
Sorry that I'm muted because I'm coughing over here, so I want to make sure that I wasn't doing that on camera. So, well, appreciate it, Brandon and Nyasha. Thank you again. Wanted to kind of bring everything home here and why this matters for municipal campaigns. So, one of the big things is obviously time that we continue to talk about is you cannot get more time in your race. So you want to be as efficient as possible and gain that competitive advantage that you get with utilizing tools that keep things kind of running smoothly without you having to think too much about them. So NGP, great tool to utilize that. And one of the other things that we haven't really talked about here, but additionally, what you can utilize NGP for throughout your campaign. And then even once you're in office, you do not have to turn the lights off on NGP once you win. And want to make sure that you utilize it to rally folks to come to support you, whether regardless of what office you're running for, you want them to come and testify at a public hearing. You've got an issue going on with the labor union. You want to make sure that you got folks that are willing to speak out in support of workers. You want to get folks to come to that meeting. You send an email from NGP. You want to kind of highlight some of the things you're doing. It's really, really hard to break through nowadays. And you want to make sure that you break through in every single medium that you can. Obviously, you're going to utilize your social media accounts to do that, and word of mouth and what have you. But what better than to send an email directly to people's inboxes to celebrate the things you got done? You built a new park, you passed a new ordinance to protect your neighbors or animals or whatever it might be. You want to be able to make sure you're doing those things. So a great tool to utilize that NGP for. And then also, it doesn't have to go away, not only when you're in this elected office, but if you're running for another office, you got all this built in, ready to go, plug and play for next office or even just next race that you're looking to run for. So you want to make sure that you're utilizing those and continuing to upkeep and never let it kind of take a back seat. Make sure that you're working there and find folks that might be able to support you while you're in office doing that as well. So those are some good extracurricular tools, I guess, and ways you can utilize this outside of everything we talked about today. But obviously, raising your money and saving time. Don't miss your pledges. As Brandon talked about, some folks running for very local offices, they've got, a spouse or a friend or a kid that's helping run the race. And spreadsheets just make a lot of sense because it's easy and everyone knows how to use it, but you will miss things. And so NGP will, help you so that you don't miss those pledges and you make sure you're making your follow-ups. The compliance risk that we mentioned, that you want to make sure that you're not missing deadlines, you're not missing fund dollars that you're supposed to be reporting, but you didn't report. You just want to stay out of trouble. And then additionally, the end all be all is you want to be talking to voters. You want to talk to voters as much as humanly possible, whether it's on the phones, via text, at the doors, at events. You want to be able to do that, making call time so you can raise more money. You want to be able to do all of that, and you want to do it efficiently so that you have the opportunity to get across that finish line and ultimately win your race to be the next city council member, school board member, special district member, for your community. So, Brandon, I'll pitch it over to you and Niaja too. If you do have anything else you want to add in here.
Naija, you want to go first?
Yes. As Jesse just mentioned, and as we talked about today, right, there are the tools mobilized in NGP that does help you grow your list, maintain your list, save time. But the most important part of all of this, as Jesse mentioned, is making sure all of that work that we did while we were campaigning, that momentum doesn't drop off as we're in office. So, making sure that we are still engaging with our lists as we are in office, as Jesse just mentioned, is going to be huge as we decide to run for reelection. So, I always scream from, mountaintops, please don't, get rid of your tools or whatever systems you have in place, right? Because the one thing that voters hate is that when we only talk to them and engage with them during election time, and we're staying engaged with folks all year round. So these tools are great to help us grow our list, but we want to also make sure that we're maintaining our list and maintaining that engagement with folks by communicating with them via email, if that is through NGP, or still posting and hosting events while we are in office, right? We can have folks come do a garden clean out with us and recruit those folks in our district to do that. So these tools are great not only while you're campaigning, but also while you're in office to make sure we just build on that momentum moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Naija. So I think we'll go to the next slide. Want to thank you all so much for coming out today. We do have some time for Q&A, so if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will launch two polls here as well. One is just asking if you would like to hear more from NGP VAN or get a demo of any of the tools that you've heard about today. And the other is if you would like more information from DMO about any of the information that you've heard from here today. So I'll launch the first one, give it about a minute while you all are answering that question, and you can drop any other questions in the chat. I'll give this just a little bit of time. I think the other thing too that we had mentioned, I mean, Naija had touched on this, but just using these tools as year-round organizing tools, I think is very impactful. I think especially at the local level, we have an opportunity to really get out and talk to people, within our community about what's going on, what we're doing in elected office, how we can better serve the community. And it's just another great way for us to stay in touch with supporters, with voters about, here's what I campaigned on and here's what I'm delivering. And so I think that's a very impactful message to have heading into, a subsequent election, but also just sharing a little bit more about, all the great work that you're doing in elected office. End this poll and then launch the second one. But yeah, I think it's just another great opportunity for us to, make the case to voters about what we're doing every day. And again, ultimately, what we campaigned on, what we're hoping to do in elected office. And, again, just delivering for the people. Give this poll just a little bit longer. Not seeing any questions in the chat, which is totally good. And we'll give it maybe just another minute here for these responses. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much again for coming to the webinar today. It's been a very informative session, I hope, for many of you. And we wish you all, the best of luck, whether you're running this year or next year, or in 2028. Again, we're here for you if you need any sort of resources. Again, we've got a ton of resources at ngpvan.com. I know the DMO does as well on their website, so definitely look for opportunities to learn more there. But other than that, I hope you all have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.